All right. Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, October 12th. It is Columbus Day. I am Donald Hovis, your host from the CWRAP Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we're pleased to be joined this morning by Mr. Dan Rogers with the South Carolina Film Commission. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And for any Canadians, happy Thanksgiving Day.
All right. So introducing your CWRAP team, our public image chair from the 5 Points Rotary Club in Columbia, Miss Mary Gask rocking her purple wig with her In Polio Now shirt that just kind of matches her background. That's just kind of what she's doing for CWRAP for this whole month. So thanks for what you do, Mary. Running the stream for us behind the scenes there. You'll see him every now and again slide across. There he is from the Somerville Evening Rotary Club in Somerville, South Carolina, Terry Moore. Good morning, Terry. All right, those of you on the Zoom call, thank you for being here. Those of you over on our District 7770 Facebook page, thank you for being there as well. How about go to the chat box, introduce yourself with your name, your Rotary Club, and answer this Christopher Columbus trivia question. Since it's Columbus Day, it's got to be a Columbus trivia question. So Columbus had several stops mapped out for his first voyage. What was his first stop on his route? No need to Google, because you should be paying attention to what Dan is going to be talking about. So I will reveal the answer at the end of today's program, but thank you for being here. Dan,
yes, sir.
How about give us a brief history of the Film Commission?
Sure. So it started under Governor Richard Riley's administration back in 1979, and it was actually part of his office. And then it transferred over, it's a little iffy, but I think it either transferred over to the Arts Commission or ETV, or went from one to the other. And then it was transferred over to the Department of Commerce because, you know, the thinking was, yeah, you guys recruit an industry. That's what commerce does. You know, go to commerce. And I actually started right after it came over to commerce. I was there as an intern, actually, when I was at Carolina in 1987. So I go way back. And since that time, the legislature, during the big transitioning of state agencies back in 1999, we went over to Parks, Recreation, and Tourism because I thought, well, you know, yeah, when you recruit a film, that's economic development, but after the film is released, that's more tourist related. So you guys go over to PRT. Okay, whatever, we can still just let us do our job. And then it switched again, maybe about 6 years after that. We went back to Commerce. And then in 2008, they put us back in PRT. So kind of going back and forth, but that history only reflects, I think, the way I've been watching it from my perspective. Just, you know, it's a both and. It's not an either or. We are economic development, and we are very tourist related. When we recruit a TV series, a movie, any media, it's especially today, everything is so visual, and everybody's got ways to look at things, it influences them. In fact, we did a study back in 2012 that measured a 10-year period of projects that we recruited. And the study went through the PRT's system. So they have, you know, Parks, Recreation, and Tourism has thousands of people on their mailing list. And they actually kept this study just for us. And they mailed it to all their people and said, have you ever been influenced to come to South Carolina based on something you saw, or you've seen, or something you watched? And it was very fascinating because what they came up with, productions that were filmed or set in South Carolina may have influenced 1.6 million household visits and $1.7 billion in travel spending during that 10-year period. So it's, you know, to me, it just, like I said, it's that both and. When we recruit films here, they spend a lot of money. After they come, they, you know, for years down the road, we reap the benefits as a state because people watch movies over and over again, and TV series play over and over again. I had calls even 10 years after The Notebook was shot, asking, you know, young men wanting to proposed to their their girlfriend at the Notebook House, because they knew it was shot in South Carolina. I had a call from Japan, from a Japanese tourism company. They were bringing in a bunch of people from Japan, and they wanted to go to the Forrest Gump house. And I had to, sadly tell them that that house was fake. It was built, but you're in Beaufort, go visit everywhere else. And I kind of pointed them, Hunting Island State Park was the jungle section. The USC Beaufort was his college. The bridge going over to Ladies Island was the bridge that he ran supposedly in Mississippi. So, I could point out lots of public places that they could go to, and they were quite happy with that. But we get those calls every now and then about the impact, like, hey, I saw that, where was that shot? I want to go visit.
So speaking of things shot in South Carolina, like the Notebook, Forrest Gump, there's several others. Am I correct?
Oh, yes. If you want to go to our website, filmsc.com, we only have 5 tabs. The 5th tab, about SC, you can look at our filmography section. The first film that we can tell was actually shot by Thomas Edison in 1914. So, it's been going on for many, many years. Of course, the biggest, productions most people recognize, like The Prince of Tides, Forrest Gump, Sleeping with the Enemy, The Abyss. I don't know if a lot of people know if they've ever seen The Abyss. If you're from the upstate, you might have remember that being shot in Gaffney, where they used a nuclear facility that had never gone online back in the 70s, when nuclear energy was supposed to, be pushed as to the forefront, and then they abandoned that tank. The director found out. We met the filmmakers at a trade show in LA, and they were looking literally for a tank to build their set in, and there weren't any that were that big anywhere in the United States until they discovered the one we had in Gaffney. So, it's a very interesting industry in that there's so many different variables that come into play as to how to make a decision. But if you look at all the films that have shot here on our filmography section, we have a huge gamut of different looks. In fact, Mary was saying earlier before we came on, she didn't know that Die Hard with a Vengeance was shot here, because it all takes place in New York. And it is. It's a very tight window of almost like a real-time story that takes place in one day in New York City. But some of the stunts and special requirements needed to film, they couldn't do it in New York. And this was back before 9/11. They wanted to blow up a subway because Jeremy Irons plays a terrorist. And again, this was before we as America had really understood hadn't had the impact personally happen to us. But even then, being able to have a huge production like that, shut down a subway or shut down a major bridge like that, it was just impossible to do. So the filmmakers called us and said, hey, can you find us a building? We're going to build this subway station inside of it. And so we found them a building in Goose Creek that was a huge building, and they were able to shoot it there. And while the director was living on the Isle of Palms, renting a beach house, and he was driving back and forth over the Cooper River Bridge, and said, hey, this bridge looks just like in New York, and we still haven't figured out how to shoot this one scene. Can we close it down for 5 days? So that's where we stepped in and made it happen. But yeah, I mean, again, just look at all the films that have shot here. Forrest Gump came here because of our jungles. The Program was a Touchstone Disney film, shot here in Columbia because we got them Williams-Brice Stadium. So a lot of different looks and different scenarios allowed us to recruit these productions here to the state.
Awesome. I know a couple other ones like The Patriot, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Legend of Bagger Vance.
Yeah.
There's several. So awesome. So why, we know South Carolina is a beautiful state, but why do we get so many requests? Do you even know?
Well, I mean, again, when I first started, 32 years ago, it was all location driven. We had these calls. They sent us a script. They said, this is what we need. This is what we're looking for. Can you find it? And we just worked it hard. We tried to, like The Patriot is a good example. They needed, like the director wanted 1 mile or 2 miles of open fields. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've been around all over the state. Our state isn't prairie, isn't wide open. There's a lot of trees. We're a very heavy vegetative state. But we scouted every county from Abbeville over to Lancaster and even Lee County, just because he wanted some gentle roll to the landscape. We scouted every county, looked into the tax records. This is before Google, remember? So we had to do everything on paper. We had to look up tax records and find out who owned the biggest swaths of land. And luckily we found the Darby Farms in Chester County that had what they needed. And to his credit, the director, Roland Emmerich, who did, oh gosh, now I'm blanking here. He did, what's the alien invasion film? You know, it has that classic shot of the White House being zapped by the aliens. Independence Day. Independence Day. Roland Emmerich did Independence Day. So he was a big, you know, effects guy, and he was doing a historical film using a lot of effects, obviously, to do that. And to his credit, like I said, the studio was Sony Pictures, and they wanted him to go to Canada because at the time in 1999, when the Patriot was shooting, Canada, the exchange rate was such that you could have saved 50 cents on every dollar. Just because the dollar went further in Canada. So the studio was like, hey, we've got a $120 million film. We can save 50 cents on every dollar. Let's go to Canada and make it. And the director was like, wait a minute. No, this is a South Carolina story. I want to make it where it was shot in South Carolina. So we're like, score. You know, of course, and he was looking just over the border in North Carolina as well, because they used kind of Charlotte as their hub of where they were going to pull their crew and equipment, and they based in Rock Hill, thankfully, and found, like I said, we found them that open field. But after you find them that, like, you know, key location, they start to build everything else. And they ended up using like historic Brattonsville and McConnell's, which is just down the road from where they found that open field. And it's very interesting, getting back to the tourism angle. The historic Brattonsville at the time was, I think, only open like 3 or 4 days because it just, you know, it was a nice place to go visit, but not a lot of people knew about it. It's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And after that movie came out, they had to open up 7 days a week because so many people wanted to go where the Patriot was shot. And so that's the power of this industry. And why they were there, they hired hundreds of people. In fact, they hired a guy just to repair shoes. I mean, get this, shoe repairmen. They spent over $5,000 on shoe repairs because, again, you've got all these hundreds of extras. They're all costumes. They're all tramping around in the mud and in the fields. It was about this time of year when they were doing it. They were shooting there, and it took them most feature films take about 45 days to shoot. I think The Patriot, because again, it was the scale, it was almost 90. It was triple the amount, you know, of what most films usually take to shoot. So yeah, it was just a really, really interesting place to be when we were always looking for locations to make them, you know, to find a place to shoot here. And that was our big selling point. We just had good looking places to shoot.
So if you have a question for Dan, we want you to post that in the chat box, and we'll get to those in just a little bit. But there was one posted that kind of goes hand in hand with our last kind of comment question is, what odd location request has the state received for the industry?
Let's see. So we had this one film called The War. And it was with Kevin Costner and a little guy named Elijah Wood at the time. I think he was like 10 years old. Elijah Wood, for anybody who remembers, he was in Lord of the Rings as Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Rings. But Elijah at the time was, you know, a young actor. He plays the son of Kevin Costner, and Kevin Costner is coming back from Vietnam, and he's going through PTSD. They didn't label it back then as PTSD. It was just, you know, he was trying to settle himself, trying to buy a house for his family, and trying to, you know, get a job, and he was tired of the violence and tired of the war that he saw. And it's called The War because Elijah Wood and his little sister, this is in Georgia in the 70s, had, you know, built a tree fort. So the key, and they have to defend it from the local bullies. So the key location for this film was a tree fort. So the filmmakers had done a film already in Georgia years before called Fried Green Tomatoes. And they loved Georgia, they loved Atlanta, they already had built, you know, some relationships there. So they had found the town in Atlanta to shoot, or outside of Atlanta to shoot, their 70s looking town. but they didn't have that tree. They wanted a beautiful tree to build a tree for. Well, again, if you look at Atlanta, it's pretty much right across even with Columbia, right in the middle of the state. And it's not, it's maybe a little gentle roll, but it's, the trees are not, they're mainly pine straight up. That doesn't make for an interesting tree house or a tree to build a tree house. So the director happened to see a picture of what a live oak tree looks like. Now, as you guys know, living in South Carolina, particularly in the Low Country, live oaks grow pretty much just along the coast. So our task for him was, I need to find a live oak tree that I can build in the middle of nowhere, that I can build my tree fort and film for 2 weeks. So we scouted every county from Horry County down to Beaufort County, and even one in, each county in, we shot over 70 trees, live oak trees, and they had to be very specifically away from everything else. Well, the one tree that he happened to see a picture of and he liked a lot was in Beaufort County. And it was, unfortunately, it was a beautiful tree, but it was also it was right in the middle of a road that took about 40 residents into their neighborhood. There was one way around the tree to go in and one way around the tree to get out. And so we were tasked when the director said, you know what, I really like this tree, can I have it? So we said, well, how do we make this work? So we talked to it wasn't really a homeowners association, but it was like a community spokesperson there that had kind of like, the ear of the community. And we said, hey, this is going to sound crazy, but can we tear up the road for 2 months and, let you guys have another road out of the neighborhood that the film, I say we, I meant the film company, they'll pay for a new road to be built on the outskirts of this wooded area. And they thought, well, yeah, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but we're game, we'll do it. It's something different. So hurdle number one, we got through it. Unfortunately, again, the landmass that we're dealing with in Beaufort was such that the wooded area that they wanted to put the new road in to keep it away from their set, far enough away from their set, was so close to the coast, to the wetlands, that then the coastal council had to step in. And they said, wait a minute, time out. Our regulations stipulate you cannot build anything within 10 feet of the wetlands. Sorry, you can't do it. So we had to go to the coastal council and say, hey, this is a temporary structure. They'll put it back as good or better than they found it. Can we, I know your policies and procedures say this, but that's for permanent structures. Can we, think it through, and since this is not permanent, redo it, have it done. And they said, you know what, okay, as long as it's not permanent. So hurdle number two was taken care of. Then hurdle number three came when we were in the process of scouting and looking around. I don't know if any of you guys have been to Beaufort, but they have a thing called the Marine Corps Air Station in Beaufort. And that tree just happened to be right in the flight line of all the jets that go overhead. Well, that's a problem when you're trying to film dialogue. All of a sudden, you've got jets every 30 minutes screaming overhead, and it messes up your dialogue, and you have to retake, and there's money involved. And so the filmmaker said, hey, can we tell the Marines not to fly? I said, no, that's not going to happen. You can't do that. But we can call the Marines. We can find out, work with the air traffic controller, see if they're willing at least to talk to you guys about, when they're doing it. And the base commander that was actually, he was wonderful about it. He said, you know what? I've got no problem with this. In fact, if we have to turn our guys another direction at the last minute, if you guys are shooting, let us know. This is what happens in wartime. We get last minute instructions, and we got to teach our guys how to think, out of the box. So they were just so cooperative, and it was great. So it took those three huge entities to come on board to get one tree, in the film. But if you watch the film, it's a wonderful little, story, again, the war, the kids are having their own war. Kevin Costner's coming back from his war. He's trying to bring everybody together. And it was a really fun time. And they spent a lot of time in Beaufort, and everybody had a good time.
So why do you do recruiting in this industry, and what kind of benefits does it offer for the state?
Sure. That's a good question. So I think that the way our office looks at it is it's economic development. These jobs, they may not be permanent, like when you recruit a BMW or a Boeing or something like that, but they're very high paying. The average job in this industry pays anywhere from $23 to $25 an hour. You work 10 to 14-hour days. They're very long days, particularly with TV series. you work 6, 7 months because it takes that long to create 10, well, 10 episode is short, but usually 22 episodes for the networks in a series work. And it takes about a week to get 1 hour's worth of finished product. So in that week's time, you've got 175, 200 people working, all being paid. If they're not from South Carolina, they're staying in hotels, they're spending their money here. If they're from South Carolina, they're there's at least 40 or 50 of them locally. They're getting paid. They then spend their money locally in the community. Just to give you an idea, what we've been kind of focusing over the years, because of, as I mentioned before, it used to be in the day that we recruited based on our locations, and now the industry has shifted a little bit. Its business model has shifted to look for incentives. That all started with Louisiana back in, I think they started their program in 2002, and they started offering a little bit of, incentive. Hey, come here, we'll give you a little bit of money if you shoot in Louisiana. We came on board with our incentives in 2005, and have since then watched the industry really just, like I said, the first call I used to get was, what are your locations and what are your crew? Now it's, what are your incentives? What are your crew? And, oh, here's what we need, kind of, sort of, can you make it work on the location, on the look? But so because of that, and because we found that there's a lot more money to be made for the state, on the state side, in recruiting TV shows and series, we've been much more aggressive about going after series work. So like Army Wives was our first network, serial network. It was Lifetime, it's still series work here in South Carolina, and they spent 7 years, 7 different seasons in South Carolina. And I'll just throw out you some numbers of why we like to recruit that type of industry. They, in those 7 seasons, they had over 1,792 production days. They stayed in over 101,000 room nights. In other words, they rented out over 101,000 room nights. They hired over 14,600 South Carolinians. And their direct spend, this isn't a multiplier effect like you see in some economic development models. This was just their direct spend was over $124 million over those 7 years. So that to us was, hey, thanks, Terry. that to us was it just made so much sense. A feature film is great, but it's, like I said, 45 days at most, for the big boys, 20, 25, 30 days, and then they're gone. And they'll hire our people during that time, but then they have to go find work in the next for the next round. And so what our thinking was, if they work 6, 7 months on a TV series, if we can time it out right, hopefully these series can just leapfrog each other and keep our people hired year round. And it's worked out. We've in the I guess now 13 years we've had our 15 years we've had our incentives in place. We've been selling out for the last 6, 7 years every year because the TV series have been coming, and it's we find it brings so much good spending to the state, gives our people, our employees, our crew a chance to work in this industry full time and hire a lot of extras. I think there was one, let's see, the average, again, one TV series can hire over 1,000 extras over the course of that season of shooting.
So what kind of changes have you seen in the industry over the years at the Film Commission?
I think what I to go back to what I already mentioned, some of the changes, of course, is that the industry has changed. I mean, you can be a filmmaker now just right here. Pick up your phone and you're a filmmaker. Kids are making. I started out making films with my dad's Super 8 movie camera. And I had to be very careful because I had 3 minutes of 50-foot roll of 8mm film, and I had to shoot it in sequence because I couldn't edit, so I had to shoot in camera. Nowadays, you can shoot all you want on digital, throw it on your computer, edit it, add sound effects. You could be a legit filmmaker and be 15 years old, and I think that's fascinating because I've always tried to reach out to students to say, hey, look at what this industry can do. Look what you can do in this industry. Watch a movie. I mean, everybody watches movie, but I tell the kids, wait till the end of the movie and watch the screen credits. There are so many different jobs that this industry can bring. If you like computers, there's a job. If you like working with animals, you're an animal wrangler. There's a great story about The Notebook. You remember the scene when the when the two young lovers were in the boat and all the swans are coming up, or not swans, I don't know what they were. I'm not a bird person, but all those birds, those water birds were coming up with them. That they hired a person in South Carolina to do that, to train those birds to not go away from the boat. His name was Dan Heydrich, and he was down in Charleston. And there's just so many opportunities in this industry for people to get involved in. And to answer the question of how it's shifted, is that the process is still the same. They still need disciplines. They still need camera, hair, makeup, sound effects, or sound people, grip and electric. They need all that, but they also need people that know computers. They also need people that know accounting. They also need people that know different the new technology that's out there. And so it's shifted in that regard, in that even the platforms now, we're having a meeting right now live on our computer. Most people probably watch their movies and television series on computer now, so, or on different platforms. Like right now, we've got a TV series called Outer Banks that's shooting its second season, and it's a Netflix series, and it's, most people are just watching it right there on their computer, so it's constantly shifting, and the business model, as I already mentioned, has shifted in that they want to come to states that have something in place, some kind of incentive in place. It's not enough just to have enough crew, and it's not enough just to have enough locations, and even locations that are open to filming. And that's a huge plus too, because when a film does come, they can be a little disruptive. Like as I mentioned, you got 200 people, you got all these trucks. All of a sudden, they want to shut down a bridge that connects Mount Pleasant and Charleston for 5 days to shoot a scene with Bruce Willis. That puts people in a weird, wait a minute, I can't get to work, or I can't get to, where I wanted to go, the way I wanted to do it. So it requires a little bit of, thinking outside the box and working with communities to let them know, yes, it's an inconvenience, but they're hiring our people, they're spending money in our economy. They're all the small businesses that are affected by this industry, lots of small businesses, everything from lumber to hotels, as I mentioned earlier, to bottled water, to shoe repair, if you want to call it that, as a small business. There's so many ways that this industry can benefit the state, and that has always stayed the same as well. It's just that the what they're looking for now has shifted, in that I don't know if you guys know anything about our neighbor to the west, Georgia, but they're making a lot of films in Georgia right now. Like all the Avenger films are being shot in Georgia, because Georgia's giving away so much money to recruit them. Our office gets about 15 million a year to recruit, and with that 15 million, we get about 2 TV series and maybe 1 feature. Georgia, on the other hand, gives away 700 million a year. So we're not even in the same ballpark, and that's why they can get all these Avenger films, and that's why they've got Pinewood Studios that came from London and built like 10 sound stages outside of Atlanta. So it's that business model has shifted as well, as to where to find the best deal with films. They're literally companies now that position themselves to help advise studios as to where is the best place to go, where you can find the best return on your dollar.
Very interesting presentation here. And we have several great questions that were submitted here by viewers. So let's get to those now at this point. How competitive, you just kind of talked about it briefly there a minute ago, how competitive are we against other states and their incentives?
Sure. Well, ours is a cash rebate, so that is actually pretty good for some films. Particularly we call ourselves a niche incentive, because we're not going to try and recruit $100 million Avengers film. That would take up all of our incentives and then some, and we wouldn't have it, and they probably wouldn't want it anyway, because it's not enough. We're limited. We're capped at 15 million. So there's that. We are capped. But if we can, like I said, that's what we focused on. TV series, because a series is about $45 to $50 million for that season, and those 2 seasons, those 2 series that we have right now, The Righteous Gemstones and Outer Banks, they take up our 15 million, but they're also very good for our people. We're probably in the middle. To answer the question bluntly, we're just about in the middle of there's probably about 38 states right now that offer incentives. We're kind of in the middle.
Has anyone from South Carolina been discovered while filming in South Carolina?
Ooh, yeah, well, no, that's a good question. I know that there was a movie called Something to Talk About with Julia Roberts and Dennis Quaid, and they did a nationwide search for their daughter. The whole storyline is, they split up, and the kind of unfolds from there. And they wanted a little girl that could ride horses because Julia Roberts' character, when she goes back home to live with her parents, Donald Sutherland and Jenna Rollins, they own a horse farm. And so there's a lot of horse riding, and they did a nationwide search and found the little girl in Orangeburg. And so I thought that was kind of cool, but I don't think she took up acting after that, but there have been people that have certainly come out of South Carolina. They may have, they haven't told me that, yeah, I got my start on a film that you guys recruited. Be nice to know if that happens, certainly.
Was Army Wives filmed in South Carolina, Charleston or Beaufort?
Charleston. Yeah, it was, in fact, when we recruited it, the Charleston Navy base became their Army base. They just made it look like an Army base. Put a couple tanks in the middle of the road, on like a display area, and put up some fake signs that said Army Post, and called it Fort Marshall, South Carolina. Yeah.
So how would you go about applying for a job on a film?
Okay, great question. So go to our website, filmsc.com. If you're a crew person, you can register it's a free registration under our production directory tab. If you're a business, you can also register your business so that people know to find you, because this production directory is basically like a phone book that we offer to the filmmakers so they can find the resources they need. And I keep it updated and constantly remind people, hey, update your information, keep it current. If you want to be an extra, follow us on Facebook or go to our website. We will post in our news section of our website any casting calls or major casting calls, but mostly on our Facebook page, because it changes daily. There's like Outer Banks right now, they're shooting. You can go to the Outer Banks casting and probably get more information about daily updates on that. But we try to put that information out there on our Facebook as well. The South Carolina Film Commission is our Facebook page.
I want to say Outer Banks is currently doing something in Myrtle Beach. There's been a boat that's been parked here for quite a while. So.
Well, I know today they happen to be on Folly, but yeah, they're all over the place. They were going up as far as Georgetown at one point too.
So that was going to kind of be my next question. I assume on a daily basis where filming is going on across the state, and so you said Righteous Gemstones and Outer Banks. Is there anything currently else filming in South Carolina?
A lot of political commercials. I've been getting a lot of calls because all these political commercials, they're running and gunning, and they want to know, all right, can we shoot here? What's the COVID protocol? That's a whole new ball game too. But actually, Righteous Gemstones has been put on hold until January, specifically because of COVID and their actors' availability. So just Outer Banks, as far as the big productions, shooting right now, and then Righteous Gemstones will pick up in January.
Today, would you say your organization is more proactive or reactive to the industry?
Good question. We try to remain proactive, but again, the nature of the industry is like, if we don't want to sell ourselves on stuff that we can't offer. So we've gone out to LA several times to make pitches, but pitching means we're ready to receive you. And if we're limited in how much we can offer, we don't want to upset people saying, well, why are you asking us to come if there's no incentives? So there's part of it is reactive. When we get a call, we have the resources and point them to where they need to go. The other half is obviously we're proactive in that we've got a grant offering for young filmmakers or independent filmmakers to help them with their small films. We're proactive in training. We offer seminars and workshops, about 6 or 7 a year, to get the crew or anybody that wants to get training in this industry, and proactive in reaching out to the communities like this right here, where I go talk to schools. I used to, can't right now, but used to talk to schools about, again, jobs in this industry and where students can maybe learn more about it.
And then the last thing I have for you is just a comment here that says Leon Rippey from Rock Hill has been in numerous movies and TV roles.
Yes, he was in the Patriot and others. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And of course, remind everybody the website.
Yes, filmsc.com.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate your time, and that's a very interesting presentation this morning. So thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I'll put this one call out. Dan, you say, obviously you spoke to us today via Zoom. If Rotary clubs around our district would like to have you as a speaker, are you up for doing that presentation?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Be
there you
glad
go,
to.
guys. If you're in a Rotary club and you need a very informative, really interesting speaker, we can provide you contact information for Dan. So just reach out to your CWRAP team for that information. We have some very smart folks on the line here about Christopher Columbus. So I said what was his first stop on his route, and that was the Canary Islands. So the Canary Islands was his first stop. And then, obviously today is Columbus Day, but did you also know that today is National Online Bank Day? It is Native American Day. It is, let's see, there's a couple more. National Farmers Day. Maybe the coolest one of them all. National Free Thought Day. So everybody has their free thought for today. It's National Gumbo Day, National Savings Day, and finally, National Vermont Day. So there are your national holidays for today. Coming up on Wednesday, we will hear from, I believe, Mr. Carl on the Rotary Foundation, I believe. So we look forward to seeing you then. Dan, thanks again so much.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, everyone.
In closing, I will do the Rotary four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a wonderful Monday. We'll see you on Wednesday for the next conversation with Rotary Action People. Take care. Bye-bye. That's a wrap.